Hello, the nice people at Runcam have sent me a Swift 2 FPV camera to take a look at. This is obviously a continuation of their Swift FPV camera, which has become far and away my favourite camera for doing FPV flying, especially for mini quads where the low latency or the low time between when you move your fingers and when you see what's happening in your screen is very important. So let's just jump straight into what's new in this one. I'm not sure if this thing that we're looking at here is going to be the official documentation, but this is something that was sent to me as an attachment from the Runcam representative, so maybe not quite the final version. But they've listed up the main features as some different options in lens sizes, so you can get slightly wider angle view than you would in the default lens that comes with the previous Swift camera. And they've increased the voltage range at the top end at least. It used to be 5 to 17 volts, and now it's 5 to 36. So before it was up to a 4S LiPo, now you can run it up to 8S LiPo if you are going to be doing something with 8S LiPos. Maybe some people might find it useful, I suppose. And then they have integrated OSD and mic. This is probably the most interesting part. Although I have to say the OSD, I haven't used it yet. I've just received it, but as far as I can tell, the OSD really only tells you the battery voltage of your LiPo pack, which is admittedly quite useful. Personally, I prefer an audio cue to let me know that my battery is going low, but a lot of people do actually use a visual readout on the OSD to see how much battery they have left, and I'm hoping that it flashes to catch your attention when the voltage gets down to a certain level. So we'll see how that turns out. And microphone, this is also sort of a preference thing. I put a microphone on one of my quads and I turned out to not really use it because I often prefer to just hear what's going on around me. So I haven't used it much, but I'll give this one a try, and it certainly makes things a lot easier having the mic inside the camera to begin with, so you don't have any extra wiring and you don't have to buy another mic and set it up and everything. So that is the features there. The other stuff that they've listed here, not too familiar with what this is yet. I think I'll have to take a look at that OSD in action so I can see what they're mentioning there. Oops, that's the second page. So obviously they have some different connectors, we'll look at that in a second, but you need to connect an audio wire to your VTX if you're going to be using the microphone output. So we'll have a look at the wiring that they've given us in a minute, and notice that they've got two different cases here, and that is because when you take a look in here you actually get two different cases. So one is the style where you have a sort of a nipply bit on the middle of the case there, and you can put it into your frame and swivel it and fix it like that, and the other is the not quite the same as the one that came with the Eagle. But this is the one where you would put it into the metal stand and swivel it like that. So you can take your pick of those, and let's have a look at the plugs that they've got on the back. So we've got power, ground, video, and then we've got audio, which is new, and battery voltage, which is new as well. So that's going to be directly from your LiPo. And then we've got a 2-pin connector for the OSD. So unlike the Eagle, which had that sort of big and clunky 6-pin connector for the OSD controller, this is the nice one in my opinion. And then to the right of that we have a little hole that says mic, so that's where the microphone is going to be behind there. I'll open this up in a minute and we'll have a look inside. And then the lens, it now has a little bit of printing on the side, and this is a 2.3 millimeter lens, and you can see it is a little bit different if you put these side by side. So the one on the right is that would be a 2.8 millimeter lens, I think, that one on the right. So this is a Swift 1 on the quad there. And another thing that is very minor, but I noticed that they've put this on both sides, this printing thing. I actually found that quite handy to know which way was up. So the fact that it's on both sides now is not very helpful, I find, but still. And this is good too, isn't it? That they've printed what focal length that is. So if you have a few of them sitting around, you're not going to be always wondering which is which. You can just know straight away. So that is very helpful. I noticed the foam that they've packed this in has changed now too. It's just sort of ordinary sponge foam, as opposed to this really cool foam that they used to package things in. That's really quite nice and stiff, and you can cut it up and use it to mount things quite conveniently. Oh, not really a part of the kit, but it was nice to get some of that foam every time you buy a camera. So as far as the rest of the contents of the box, you get one of these mounts, and you get the controller for the OSD. That's a little 2-pin thing. You get some screws and an Allen key. There's a nut in there as well. I guess that's for mounting the bottom of the base plate. And you get cable for the main 5-pin out plug, and it goes from one of those. Oh, hold on a second. It goes 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, that's interesting. One is 5 and one is 4. Okay, so now that I've unraveled this wire a little bit, I can see that the blue wire is being separated at the outside end. So this is probably the battery voltage connection. Yes, the blue wire is for your battery voltage. And you also get a regular or previous design sort of 3-pin ground positive voltage and video wire. It just goes from one of those to another one of those, and these are the ones that were used on the Swift before. So it looks like you can use one of these the same way in that plug, like that. So if you're not interested in audio out or the battery voltage checking, you can just use this plug like that. And the last thing you get in the box is this cable, and this is just going from a 2-pin to a 2-pin, but it's a male on one end and a female on the other end. So I think what this is probably supposed to be used for is connecting into the OSD controller plug, and this just lets you extend that out somewhere that's a little bit easier to access from outside your quad, because I found that often when I want to plug my OSD controller thingy, this little joystick thing, into the back of my camera, it's kind of a pain in the ass to reach in there and get it, and I often find myself using tweezers or poking it with a bit of stick or something. So this is a really nice idea to let you do that much easier. This thing here is different again from, I think it's different to both the previous Swift and the Eagle. It seems to be quite a bit chunkier. It looks a bit thicker than I remember. It's aluminium. And it fits, of course, with this, which is also different. So this is a different design to what we've seen before. On the right I have the old Swift, and it has a smaller nipply bit. Looks like about the same radius of distance between those two holes though. And this will of course fit in there quite nicely and let you mount it and swivel around. One thing that's a little bit weird is that this other one doesn't really seem to fit in there properly. You could put one hole in the middle, say. Let's say I put that middle hole into the central part of this circle thing, but then I can't, the other holes don't reach. You see what I mean? I would have thought that the other hole would be coming up here like there, but the distance between them doesn't match, so you're just going to be using one hole only, I guess, to screw this in. It's probably enough, but seems a little odd. Unless I'm missing something. I don't think it's going to let you use two of those holes. So what I thought I'd do to compare these two cameras, the old and the new Swift, is I'd strap them to my testbed double DVR recording thing. I'm not really expecting that there's going to be any differences in light handling or wide dynamic range or contrast and all that kind of stuff, because it's not mentioned in the documentation that they gave me. So I'm presuming that the sensors and all the image processing stuff is the same. It's just the OSD that will be different. So I'm not expecting to see a whole lot of difference in the video, but I'll do this test anyway, just in case there is some kind of difference. And ideally, what I would also want to do is record the audio from the new one while I'm doing this. But I have rather short-sightedly cut the audio wires going into my DVRs, that's the green ones there, cut them really short, so it's going to be quite difficult to use those. So what I might do to record some audio is I'll just record it through my Fat Shark goggles, and it won't be like a direct connection, so we'll have a little bit of radio interference between the quad and the goggles. That's why I set this up. I thought it's a fairer comparison to not have a radio transmission in between what the camera is actually giving you and what you're recording onto your DVR. But yeah, I don't think I can be bothered to try and restore this cable here, to be honest. So I'm just going to use my goggles to record the audio, and hopefully that's good enough for you. For the first test, I just walked around the backyard holding this test rig thingy, and you'll notice that there's no OSD showing here, and I think that's just because these little DVR units that I'm using to record this particular video are not recording the very bottom part of the screen, which is where the OSD display is, the voltage, and there's also a timer counting up to show how long the camera has been on. And the signal, I'm guessing, is PAL, because that's what it says on the box of the Runcam, and these things are trying to record NTSC. I think that's what's going on. So we do not see any OSD on this one, but when I recorded, as you'll see later on, when I recorded with my Fat Shark goggles and also with this Earsheen like DVR monitor thing that I have, they both recorded the OSD text correctly. So I won't show you too much of this, but it should be obvious that they are practically the same as far as color and light reaction and all that kind of stuff. But you will of course notice that the Swift 2 on the right has a slightly wider field of view. After this, I attached the test rig to a mini quad, and unfortunately the cameras ended up pointing quite far upwards, which is not really ideal, but I mean, it doesn't matter too much, I suppose. And there wasn't really much point doing this, given that the test from walking around the yard just holding it was really enough to show us a reasonable comparison between the video of each camera. But I just thought, what the hell, I will do it anyway since I'm here, and so that's what this video is. Not really a whole lot extra to look at from what we just saw though, especially since I'm not recording the sound in either case. So to actually use this Swift 2 to look through while I was flying, and also to test the audio, I had to wire up this little connection here using some of the pieces from my Immersion RC Tramp VTX and some of the cables that came with the Swift 2. And then this video here is what we're about to see, so I'll kind of shut up while this is playing, because part of the point of this video is to see how the audio sounds. And again, I'm about 20 centimeters away as I'm speaking here, so let's just jump straight into some flying. All my recording things are recording, I hope. And again, I'm about 20 centimeters away as I'm speaking here, so let's just jump straight into some flying. All my recording things are recording, I hope. And again, I'm about 20 centimeters away as I'm speaking here, so let's just jump straight into some flying. All my recording things are recording, I hope. Now I'm about 2 meters away and I'm speaking quite loud. It's kind of windy. Now I'm about 2 meters away and I'm speaking quite loud. It's kind of windy. Now I'm about 2 meters away and I'm speaking quite loud, and it's kind of windy. practicing that for weeks. So now I'm just sort of crouching down behind the quad and talking kind of loud. So hopefully this is enough to give you an idea of what the audio sound is going to be like with it. And yeah, I'm sorry it's kind of dark, but we're doing an audio test, right? So it doesn't really make too much of a problem if it's dark. And you already saw what the camera performed like when it was sunny. Okay, so that's how the audio sounds when you're flying. There's probably just one other thing that we need to look at, and that is the OSD displays that we're seeing on the bottom here. I've got this hooked up and I've got the little joystick thingy ready to use. Now it's labelled up and down on there, and this is going to be important in a minute because there's actually an extra menu that you can access now in addition to the menu that's always been in the Swift already. And the reason I had it like that when I was flying just before with the iForce 2D kind of covered up by the Runcam display was because I just didn't really look at the instructions carefully before going out and flying it. So you can of course turn these off if you don't like them, or you can shift the displays around. So if you click this once, you get the same old menu. In fact, I'm pretty sure this is exactly the same as in the Swift 1. There's nothing new as far as I can tell. So this cam title here is what I have set to be iForce 2D. So that's the one that we're seeing. How do we get out of here? Hold on. So if I get out of that menu, that's why we're seeing iForce 2D there. But there's a Runcam on top of it, which is coming from this other menu, and you access that one by holding up for 2 seconds. So this is new in the Swift 2, and you can set the pilot name there, and you can also say whether you want the pilot name to show at all, and the timer and the voltage displays. So for example, let's turn the timer off and then exit. So now the timer's gone. Hold up again to go back there, and I can use this setting here to put my name in. Let's just say my name is Runcam for now. And when you're in this menu, I found that if you hold left or right or down as well, I think, just holding left for 2 seconds, see how the voltage display went a little bit darker there? Now I'm in a different mode where I can shift it around, put it somewhere else. Say if I wanted it in the top left, I could put it there, and then one click on the middle button, so just push the button directly down, will exit that mode. And I think if I hold it down for 2 seconds, yeah, now this one became dark and we can move this one around. So I could put my pilot name at the top if I wanted to, or somewhere else. And then a middle click again to exit that mode. So that's pretty cool, isn't it? So presumably, holding up to get into the main menu again, presumably if I turn my timer back on, I can also move my timer around by holding right. Yeah, that's cool. So I can put everything at the top like that. Nice. There's one other thing here in this menu that I don't really understand what it's for. See this thing called baseline. If I turn that on and this number goes up to 9, and it seems to be the distance from the top of the screen that I've put the label on the top, haven't I? Hold on. Let's make it a little bit higher. Let's make it a 6. And now we get these 6 dashed lines there, 6 hyphens or whatever you want to call them. And I have no idea what they're for. But that baseline number, because we had it 3 before, was on top of the Runcam. So it's just the row of text that it's going to appear in on the screen. What is that for? Anyone know? Maybe I need to go back and read the instructions again. Maybe it says something about it, but I missed it, I guess. Anyway, so that's yeah, that's the new menu. Quite handy and easy to use. And the other menu, for people that have become familiar with it, you'll be pleased to know that that is in here as well, unchanged. So that's about all I have to show you for this video. They've taken what was already a pretty good camera and added some nice upgrades for it. And as we saw, there's no major changes to the sensor or any of the video image processing electronics. It's mainly this sort of peripheral things like voltage detection and audio, or audios I guess is a fairly major change. But each of these changes will depend on what you prefer, really. So for me personally, none of these changes are really a huge step up, although I will of course be leaving this Swift 2 on the quad now that it's there. I mean, it's so similar to the Swift and the Swift 1 in performance, there's not really any point taking it off to put the other one on, to be honest. And I do kind of like seeing the voltage display on the screen. It's not a huge win for me personally because I already have my transmitter set up to beep if the voltage goes too low, and I can see on my transmitter LCD display the voltage when I plug it in, but I have to take my goggles off to do that. So it is kind of nice to immediately be able to see at any time in your goggles what the voltage is, just in case you hook up a battery that was not fully charged and you take off. You can just do a quick flick your eyes down to the bottom corner of the screen and make sure you haven't done that before you take off. The microphone, again, personally for me that's not a huge win because I probably wouldn't be using it anyway, but for people that do want a mic, of course that is a pretty nice win because you don't need to set it up and have extra wiring, and you don't need to buy a microphone obviously. And likewise for the OSD, you don't need to buy an OSD to get your voltage display on the screen, and you don't need to have any extra wiring to hook up your OSD to your flight controller. So those are pretty nice wins. As far as the timer goes, that's also for me personally, I don't really care about that so much, but other people might. The only problem with the timer is though it starts counting up from 0 as soon as you plug the quad in. So typically you're not going to be taking off immediately after that. At least I sort of mess around for 10-15 seconds or so getting my goggles on and stuff. So I'm always going to have to be considering that I've got to look at the time and subtract say 10 or 15 seconds from it, which is not a big deal, but it would be nice if it could somehow just measure the time that you've actually been flying in the way that a proper OSD would, that's running from your flight controller, that knows when you've armed the quad and so on. So again, I don't really care too much about that. What else was there? Microphone, OSD. Oh, the different lens types. I do quite like this lens. So this is a 2.3mm one, and that, as you saw from the side-by-side comparison, gives you it doesn't make it a huge sort of a fisheye stretching the image kind of thing. So that's nice. But it does give you a nice step up in field of view. I actually quite like that lens, so I'll definitely be keeping that one on. Not too much else to say. Oh, God, I almost forgot, but we should look at this because this is also, of course, something that you're going to consider when you're deciding if you want one. Here's the thing, look, there's only $3 difference between the Swift, which doesn't have any of this stuff, and the Swift 2, which does have all this stuff. So for $3, it's a no-brainer, really. I mean, you're going to get this one, aren't you? Why would you not? As I say, most of these new features will come down to preference as to how valuable they are for each person. But when you consider that for a few extra dollars, you could, maybe try the audio and see if you like it. Who knows, your preferences might change. Anyway, that's about all I have to say on this for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.